go.
Welcome to I'm Not Joking, the podcast where a behavioral scientist examines what it's like to live a humorous life. Glimpse into the lives of the funniest people in entertainment, business, and science as your host, Dr. Peter McGraw, explores their habits, motivations, and secrets to success. Get ready to fire up your brain and your funny bone. Now, here's your host.
Hello, listeners. Wanted to quickly let you know that my new book launches on April Fool's Day. The title is Stick to Business: What the Masters of Comedy Can Teach You About Breaking Rules, Being Fearless, and Building a Serious Career. Look for it on Amazon. Also, I'll be launching a podcast every day around the launch. Hope you enjoy this episode. Let's get started. Welcome to I'm Not Joking, the podcast that looks at the lives of funny people. I'm Peter McGraw. Today's guest is Alex Berg. Alex is an LA-based comedian, actor, writer, and producer. Before coming to LA, he studied psychology at Vassar College. You may have seen him on Terriers, The Goldbergs, and Reno 911, among other shows. He's a team member of UCB's mainstay Convoy, which I have yet to see, but people rave about, and Sentimental Lady. And I'm a regular audience member on that Saturday night Sentimental Lady show called Guilty Pleasures. They're my favorite house team. Welcome, Alex.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So this podcast is a long time coming.
We've known each other for some years at this point.
Yeah, you probably should have been among the first 10 episodes, not the last 10 episodes. But you're here. I'm very happy you're here.
Better late than never.
If you weren't working as a comedian, actor, writer, or producer, what would you be doing with your life?
Oh my God. I mean, Jesus, straight to the heavy questions. I mean, I think that before I came out to LA, or rather before I had the plan to come out to LA, I was in college. I had studied physics for 2 years.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. My first 2 years at college, I was a physics major and was completely on the professorial track mentally. I don't know realistically whether or not I was, but in my head, I was like, I'm going to just stare at the stars and think about how big space is for the rest of my life. And then after that, it was Cog Sci. And same thing was like, doing like a research project and putting,
my life.
Yes, truly.
Yeah.
And like literally.
I like how those lives have now intersected.
Yeah, they've come back around. Yeah. So, I mean, I suppose I would be doing that. But, then my senior year, a friend of mine who I had done comedy with in college, who graduated a year ahead of me, he had moved out to LA and he came back to visit for like a week or something at one point. And he was just like, you should move out to LA. And I was like, no, I'm going to go to grad school. And he was like, you hate writing papers. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, well, that's all you're going to do the rest of your life.
It's true.
I mean, it seems so, in hindsight, it seems so dumb to need someone to point that out to you, you know, but he did. And so he convinced me to move out here. And that was, I got out here like 3 months after graduation.
So this is like why arranged marriages work surprisingly well.
Really?
Sometimes other people know you better than
you just sort of get that thing of like, oh, that's a great point. Yeah, I do hate doing this.
I would say I'm not sure that arranged marriages work well, but they work better than you would expect them to.
Right, yeah.
And I think part of the reason...
I have a good friend who used to be a matchmaker. Like that was her job. Like she would, meet with people like... kind of like a sort of upper echelon, like online dating thing where people would fill out profiles and she'd go meet with them in person. And then all the people she met with, she would pair them up. And her thing was always like having to convince people to go on the date she'd set up for them. She'd be like, this person is great for you. And they'd look at them on paper and be like, I don't know. They said like Dave Matthews Band is one of their like ride or dies. And she's like, oh, trust me.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you came to LA because it was LA, not because of comedy.
Well, I came to because of comedy actually. Yeah. Okay. So my friend Matt, who had convinced me to move out here, he was out here at the time. There was a theater in Hollywood called Improv Olympic, which then became IO West, which then shut down about a year ago.
The remnants of it are just a few blocks from here on Hollywood Boulevard.
Not far at all. And he was doing shows there and taking classes, and he was like, "You guys should come out. We'll set up a sketch show." And we started writing and stuff. And I sort of felt at the time like my choice was either Los Angeles or New York for doing like comedy entertainment stuff. And I grew up near New York, so of course I have a deep-seated hatred of it. It stinks and it's loud and it's crowded, And truthfully, LA, I also hated the first couple of years I lived out here.
We were joking about this before
the
podcast. LA is a great city.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have a commute, you have a salary,
yes,
and you have good friends.
It's a very easy city to be bad at.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
That's right.
Like there's a I will say, like, New York, for as much as I don't care for it personally, I do think it kind of presents itself to you. Like you can wander 3 blocks in New York and like all of a sudden find a bar you like, find a restaurant you like, find a bookstore you didn't know about. Like they just happen.
Mm-hmm.
In LA, you're in your car. So like unless someone kind of gives you like the wink and nod, like you don't really know those things exist. And then once you find them, you get this like constellation of cool spots and you can just ignore everything you don't like.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay. So you didn't get off the bus and there wasn't an agent there ready to sign you.
No.
And it was a tough few years.
It was, the first 3 years I was here, I mean, there was a lot of like, I was 22. My friend who had actually convinced me to move out here passed away like 6 months later. So that was a shock.
Mm-hmm.
None of us had planned on that, but it was just, you have this conception in your mind of what it is to move to LA, which is, well, I'm going to be at this comedy club and then I'll get discovered and I'll go out on auditions. And the reality of it is far, far more quotidian. Like you're just kind of going like, okay, how can I make rent the next 3 months? Like if I eat oatmeal 2 meals a day, that means I can get all my grocery shopping for the week done for like $12.
Right. Yeah.
Still have money for beer,
Yeah, that's tough. Yes.
But
now, here's my question.
Yeah, shoot.
Do you look back? We're going to get back to what you would have done.
Well, we can go in a thousand looping spirals.
But do you look back on those days in some wistful way, or like you sort of paid your dues in a sense?
Yeah.
How do you look back on those early days?
I think I have a little bit of nostalgia for not. LA does kind of harden you a little bit in that I'm just as a quick example. I'm currently taking an animated half hour out to pitch, which is great, and I'm excited about it. But I'm not the same kind of excited I used to get before I had been burned for literally a decade plus just by constant rejection,
And it's, by the way, there's a particular form of rejection here.
Yes.
Which is you're in the meeting and everybody loves it. Right?
Yes.
Very rarely does someone just shit on the idea in the meeting.
No.
I would actually prefer they do.
I had that happen once. I actually no longer prefer that.
Oh, okay, that's fair. I had it happen to me once too. But I hung up the phone. It was in a conference call.
Yeah.
I hung up the phone. I was like, okay, well, Nat Geo's not interested.
Yeah, there's closure.
Yes.
Yeah, you can just walk away.
Oh, we love this. Okay, we'll be in touch. And then you never hear from them.
Yeah, and I've been burned so many times by it goes well in the room. Your reps talk to you and they're like, everybody loved it. This thing's going to go in 2 months, and you start daydreaming and you start going like, oh my God, my life's about to change. And then it doesn't, and if you, the key, at least for me, for sanity has been like, you kind of have to learn to let go of that hope, as dismal as that sounds. You just kind of have to go like, well, like I presented myself well in the room. I'm happy with that. I made a good impression on those people. Whether or not this project goes, I'm happy with that hour of my life. And now I move on, Yeah.
So you miss a little bit of the excitement of the
That's the same thing I think everybody truly misses about being 18. Like, I think on paper, being 18 sucks for most people.
But there is something about what I always say about being young is like the highs are higher and the lows are lower.
Mm-hmm.
And so
100%.
And this is not a complaint. This comes from a place of privilege.
Mm-hmm.
But like I remember my first international trips.
Yes.
And I remember, you know what I mean? Like I remember going to places for the first time and doing this thing for the first time and how exciting it is.
Yeah, the world was so fresh at one point.
Yes, and then at some point, I remember this. I knew I had crossed a threshold of in some way where I was on a plane. I forget where it was. I don't know. I was on a plane to some country. Oh, I know where it was. I was going to Uganda.
Man,
I'm on the plane. This is for the humor code because we were going from Uganda to Tanzania, and I remember thinking, "Oh, I wonder if I need a visa."
Yeah.
Like I had become so cavalier about
Well, your focus shifts, right? Like you go from focusing on the adventure to just focusing on whether or not you packed enough shoelaces. Like
yeah. The answer is yes, but you can buy it at the airport.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Okay, so that you miss a little bit.
Yeah, I think I miss just like I think I miss not knowing how bad the burn can be.
Okay.
Because it does make you a little bit more hesitant, rightfully so, to stick your hand on the stove, I guess.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Okay, so but those days are, I mean, look, you could go back to them. It's the world of entertainment.
Yes.
But if you hadn't done this, are you a professor right now? Are you stuck as a postdoc somewhere?
Yeah, I'm probably.
Or did you do something else?
I think if I hadn't done this, I think there's a difference between if I hadn't done this and if I had stopped doing this. I think if I ever stopped doing this.
Oh, that's fair.
By
the way, I don't think anybody's ever answered the question this way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's great.
Oh, I think they're very different forks in the road.
No, I know, but I don't think anybody's ever gone, well, if I wasn't doing this now.
Oh,
I
yeah.
hadn't done this.
Yeah, I think if I hadn't come out here, I probably would have spent a long time as a frustrated graduate student pushing for a PhD, doing something involving AI, consciousness, and robotics. Like that stuff still fascinates me. I still read about that stuff whenever I can. Like lately I've been obsessed with octopuses, so maybe I would have transferred to marine bio at some point. But I think it would have been, I would have tried very hard to monetize my curiosity,
Yes.
Whereas I think if tomorrow the mayor of Hollywood,
the metaphorical Hollywood and the metaphorical mayor.
Yeah, the big cheese of Hollywood Boulevard. He's got a top hat and a monocle. He's just carrying around award trophies. If he came down the street was like, hey man, you got to go.
Yeah.
I think I would probably move to the East Coast and open up a used bookstore and just sit and read all day.
Okay.
I think I would live a very quiet life where I could just drink tea and read books.
So you would be bookish.
Yes. Yeah. I think I'd be bookish either way. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. That's fair. Well, that hasn't happened yet. So
No. I keep seeing him walking around. And I dodge him. I don't answer his calls.
Now, were you? I don't mean this is not a critique. So I had asked you if you came here for comedy, or if you just came here and then you discovered comedy.
Yeah.
Because I could have seen the other.
Mm-hmm.
I could have seen the thing as you're a smart guy.
Mm-hmm.
You might be a little quirky, but you weren't like the class clown, and you weren't like the funny, always the funny guy.
Oh, I was the class clown.
You were,
yeah. I started. I was always a.
Were you the class clown at private school, or were you the class clown in public school?
I was a public school class clown.
Okay, all right. So that's hardcore class clown.
Yeah, from very early on. I remember getting bad grades in 5th grade in spelling because I would do doodles on my thing, and I was always a good student, but I was good enough that I could mess around, and I think that kind of rubbed some of my teachers the wrong way. But I was always a goofball, and I started going to a performing arts camp in upstate New York when I was 11 and started doing improv and sketch then. And so always kind of had the bug, but never really thought it was a thing you could actually do.
Yes.
I did a production of Our Town, classic Thornton Wilder play, rite of passage for anybody who ever reads a page of any script. You have to do Our Town when you're in high school. But the director of it was Christian Long, whose older brother was Justin Long, who at the time had just been in Galaxy Quest and was maybe doing something else. And I remember being at a cast party, and he was there, and him talking about how it's super fun, but you got to want it real bad. And I remember having that conversation with him, and he wasn't negative about it at all. He was a really nice guy, super positive, but me just going oh, I don't think I want it that bad.
And and I do think there is a little bit of that. I want it really bad.
Yeah.
I teach in my marketing management course. I teach I teach a Lady Gaga case.
Okay,
it's a crowd pleaser.
Sure,
for the people who like Lady Gaga.
It's a chart topper for the marketing management people.
It is indeed. And one of the things that we do at the beginning of almost all of these cases is we do what we would call a 3Cs analysis. So we do an analysis of the company, analysis of the competitors, and an analysis of the customers. Mm-hmm. It's a fairly standard model of thinking about marketing problems. Mm-hmm. So in the case, the company is Lady Gaga. And so we talk about what Lady Gaga's good at, what she's not good at, what, at this particular stage of her career.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really stands out is how bad she wanted it.
Yeah.
And how she was willing, how hard she was willing to work, how she was willing to forego profits in order to build something better and better and better. And I think in a world of, when there's sort of like a survivor bias, which the world of whether it be music, the tech world, entertainment generally, certainly comedy.
Yeah, history's written by the victors.
Yes. You just, that has to be a constant, where if you don't really want it badly, you probably can't do enough of the things that are just going to even give you a chance to get lucky enough.
I frequently, as many of us do, I have a mother who's super, she'll hear this. She's super supportive and super encouraging. And anytime even like a third or fourth degree friend of hers has a kid who's getting out of college and moving to LA, I get an email from a stranger who's like, hey, my mom got your email from this mom who got it from your mom, and anyways, can we meet up and, talk about like, what you got to do to have a career? And, and the thing I always say is like, look,
do you I think of you like you set a coffee date, then you cancel it, then you set a coffee date, you cancel it, you set the date of coffee, and the fourth one you show up and you say, do they actually follow through? You're like, you got a shot, kid.
You'll make it. No, I mean, it's funny because the last one of these I had, kid was very nice. He was 22, also named Alex, as evidently everyone from the East Coast is required to be. But the way I was explaining to him was like, again, not in a disparaging way, but just it's a lottery, like these stories you hear of somebody, anytime someone tells you it's a meritocracy, they are lying and blinded by their own privilege and luck, and the reality of it is like being good at what you do buys you a bunch of lottery tickets. Being nice and easy to work with buys you a bunch of lottery tickets. Having a day job and just being able to be in LA for another year buys you a bunch of lottery tickets.
I like that.
And so for me, it's kind of like, well, I'm just trying to buy as many tickets as I can. If one of them goes, great. But if not, at least in the meantime, I have a life that I like. I'm not relying on the lottery for my day-to-day income. I don't have that like insanity and self-worth like trapped up in it anymore.
And as I like to say, it's fun to hold on to a lottery ticket.
Yes, it's great. Oh, the enthusiasm, the excitement it promises.
Especially when you're starting out.
Yes, when you're first starting out, it's like, oh,
but even still, it's still nice to have a lottery ticket in your wallet.
Yeah. I mean, I'll always be... I recently went full-time at a place at my job, which is the first full-time job I've had since 2008.
Wow.
And so 12 years of just, never having that stability. And one of the conversations they had was like, look, if you go full time here, we're going to want you to really commit. And I was like, yeah, I'm always still going to be doing stuff on the side though. And they're like, we'd like you not to do that. And I was like, well, I'm not going to stop doing that. So
you can't.
Yeah. Like if that's a deal breaker, then so be it. But like, I'm going to keep doing
Good
that,
for you.
and that's a conversation you can't imagine having when you're 18. When you're 18, you're like, yeah, no, I love the Apple Store. I'll work here forever.
That's great. I think that's, I get that idea. So on my other podcasts I do an episode with some entrepreneurs and we talk about, do you go all in or do you do your entrepreneurial venture as a side hustle?
Yeah.
And one of the things that they seem to agree on is until the market is really speaking to you, you're probably best off keeping it as a side hustle.
Yeah.
Because you're going to avoid ruin. Most of these side hustles don't ever go anywhere. And so, but you want to pay very close attention to when's the world saying we want this thing.
Yeah.
And then when the world's saying we want this thing, then you go all in. So this is a town that allows that. So do you know, do you know Claire Downs?
I don't believe I do.
Claire's she's more on the writing side of things. So she's like a sketch writer and she's done a bunch of stuff, but she hasn't had her big break yet. So she's in my new book. She's in Stick to Business because Claire doesn't have a full-time job, but she needs to pay her bills.
As do we all.
Yes. And she takes these shitty temp jobs. What Claire does is she gets her, and she said this on the podcast, so I'm not.
Yeah, you're not like airing dirty secrets or anything.
And it's all in the book now too. So.
So they're aired.
So she is ruthless about pursuing her comedy. she's not going to let the temp job get in the way of her comedy. So she does her work, but she does it right away, and she gets it done. She doesn't, milk the day. And then she has all these tricks that she has to allow her to be at the temp job and to do her comedy. So she tells people, I'm vitamin D deficient, so I need to get some sunlight. So then she goes, and she can go outside and take calls. Work at an outdoor cafe. And her best one is she has what she calls her go bag. So she has a backpack with her laptop and notes and all this kind of stuff. And then she puts that in another backpack. She gets to work, she does her work, and then she leaves the one backpack in the back of her chair. And then she, has a coffee, and then wrappers for snacks and everything.
Yeah, so it looks like the desk is fully populated.
And then she takes her other bag and goes off somewhere and works on her comedy.
I used to, when I was at TV Guide Networks, this is, first of all, TV Guide used to have a network. They used to make original programming.
Wild.
Those were the days. When I say my early 20s were full of hope, this is one of the organizations that hadn't yet felt the true sting of burn. But our offices were at Hollywood and Highland Mall, which for people who don't live in LA is one of the worst designed malls I've ever been to in my life. Oh, you are not missing out on anything. It is a nightmare. And TV Guide's offices were split. There are post departments, like all the editors and the edit bays and stuff. We're at Hollywood and Highland Mall on the 4th floor. I had an office for a while in the basement, in a windowless basement. And then for a little bit longer, I had an office.
That's where you should put the editors.
Yes, you would think. But yeah, it made the whole thing was insane. But and then we had another office across the street at Franklin and Highland, so basically a block away. And what I would do is I would tell everybody, because this was kind of before everyone had cell phones, but you weren't expected to be on them 24/7. Blackberries had just become a thing.
I remember those days. Somewhat fondly.
Yes, very fondly. So I would tell everyone at Highland and Franklin office, I'd be like, hey, I've got to go over to the edit bays for, X, Y, and Z. And I would tell everyone at the edit bays, hey, I'll be at Highland and Franklin. And then I would just go sit and work on sketches or write my blog,
I wish we had taped this earlier because you probably would be in the book right now.
Yeah. It was truly the idea was always, well, how can I do enough work that TV Guide finds me indispensable? But how can I also do it in such a way where I'm not losing time to actually doing the stuff I came out here to do?
Yeah. So the reason I have this, so this is a perfect example. I'm going to shamelessly plug my book for a moment.
Plug it.
It's called.
Be shameless about it.
Shtick to Business. Comes out April 1st. In it, one of the things I make a case for is how comedians are rule breakers. And so they often break the rules in order to make comedy, in order to actually make things funny. But they also will break rules in order to make comedy.
To physically produce
to produce comedy, because the world of comedy is so cutthroat, so difficult, that if you always play nice and if you always play by the rules, you might not get very far, right? So the world can crowd out your comedy and so on. And so I have example of, for example, Eric Marlin Bishop, young stand-up comedian, going to open mics. He recognizes that it's 90% men.
Yes.
And the bookers want to have not a whole bunch of dudes all wearing cargo pants. No offense, because I know
none
cargo
taken.
Shorts.
Yeah.
We'll get back. I actually have a question about those. We'll get back to those in a second. So the few women who sign up for the open mic might get moved up on the list a little bit, just to have some form of diversity, difference, palate cleanser, different perspective, etc. So he gets to the open mic. He doesn't sign up Eric Marlin Bishop. He signs up names that could sound female but could pass as male.
Right.
One of them was Stacey Green. One of the other ones, Jamie Foxx. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? And so is it any surprise that Jamie Foxx is Jamie Foxx? You know what I mean? He's looking for every angle he can to make it work. And I think when you start looking in the world of comedy, you start looking in the world of entrepreneurship, I'm not saying people are committing fraud.
No, but
they're not breaking laws, but
you're bending them.
You're bending. Yeah, exactly.
Like there's a guy, I used to do commercial auditioning for years, which is, I would argue, more of a grind and less rewarding than any day job I've ever had. It is just a brutal, and I'm not trying to disparage anybody who does commercials. It's just when you don't book anything for 5 years, it is just a brutal grind.
Yeah.
But there was a guy who we all knew. None of us knew him personally. We all knew sort of the legend of this guy whose name was Johnny Three Nuts. And that was not his given name. He had changed his name to Johnny Three Nuts because he was like, well, everyone will remember the name Johnny Three Nuts.
Indeed.
And we all do. And he would book stuff. You'd see him in commercials and be like, that's Johnny Three Nuts.
I think there's an interesting thing. Is it a coincidence that you've got Lady Gaga, Prince, Madonna, Pink? You know what I mean?
It's kind of evocative, single name, very simple.
Right? I mean, some of it might have to do with the type of person who would be willing to take on one of those names is also the type of person who might be so supremely talented.
Yeah.
But if I don't know what Sting's real name is.
Oh,
but it's boring.
To know it. Yeah. It's
right?
like Gordon or something.
Yeah.
Stuart Gordon or something like that.
That's right. I forget what it is. There's people screaming at this podcast right now because they know what it is.
yeah.
But maybe he's not the lead singer for the Police.
Yeah.
Right. And so that I think there's something to.
Well, it's kind of branding, right? Like everybody knows Nikes. Nike isn't Nike Athletic Shoe Company. It's there was a documentary called Helvetica I saw years ago.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Yeah, just about the font. But one of the examples they gave was how Nabisco used to be the National Biscuit Company.
Yes.
And then they rebranded in the 70s to be Nabisco. And it's you just kind of, it's a thing, something that's a mouthful is rarely memorable, so you kind of want that quick, sort of thing.
So maybe you shouldn't be Alex Berg.
I'll just go by Berg.
You're just Berg.
Honestly, I've thought here's the benefits of being named Alex Berg. So there is a very successful producer named Alec Berg.
Okay.
Who did Seinfeld. There's a whole episode of Seinfeld where they say he has a very John Houseman name. And Mr. Berg, Alec Berg, did you hand in, which came out when I was in 7th grade and blew my mind. He's currently producing Barry on HBO.
Oh, yeah. But people rave about that.
It's one of the best shows. It's so good. It's so incredible.
Can I ask why it's so good?
Yeah. Yes, you may, Peter. I give thee permission.
I haven't seen it, but I certainly know that... what's his butt? The singer.
I'm blanking on his name now. Oh, Bill Hader.
Bill Hader is
and Stephen Root,
a very funny guy.
Yeah. It's for me, it strikes a very personal note because it's.
And so the premise is it's a assassin who wants to get into acting.
Yeah, so basically Bill Hader plays an assassin from the Midwest who has a job in LA, and to get close to the target, he has to sign up for an acting class where the guy is. And then he falls in love with acting, but he's still can't
get out. It's a classic.
Yeah.
It's a classic trope or whatever.
Yeah, it feels very Hitchcocky. You
can't get out. You want to get out, but you can't get out.
But so it's for me, what I love about it is it's tonally. I really love Elmore Leonard. I had pitched a half-hour comedy to AMC years ago with some friends that was basically Elmore Leonard, but instead of 25% comedy, 75% crime, it was the reverse.
Okay.
We sort of said if Breaking Bad was told from the point of view of Badger and Skinny Pete. And I think that's kind of what Barry does so well is it's a crime story. It's a really fun crime story, but they've just shifted all the really heavy criminals are kind of not the focus. And even when you meet them, they're really weird, unique, bizarre characters. And
they're not these super threatening...
No,
Soprano type guys.
No, I mean they're all there's a whole thing where the leader of this Colombian cartel is super into self-help books and personal motivation. And he's
fun.
Very positive, so it's truly fantastic, but it's produced by Alec Berg, and Variety keeps misspelling his name in the articles as Alex Berg. And so I will frequently...
your IMDb page.
Yeah, I mean, I get... I was at a bar recently and I put my card down, and this bartender looked at my card and he goes, "Are you really Alex Berg?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "I love your work, man." And I was like, "Oh, thanks," assuming he'd seen me at UCB or something. And then was there like drinking all night or whatever, and got my tab back, and it was like $10, and the guy kind of shot me finger guns. And I couldn't figure out what happened. I was like, "Oh, he thinks I was the other one," which is hilarious.
Hey, enjoy it for as long
I'll
as
take it.
lasts.
I'll take it. Yeah.
Wait, how did we get on why you like Barry so much?
Oh, we're saying I should be Berg, and then it was Alec Berg.
got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, so your world is super fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
I find that I'm better off studying it and observing it than I am trying to do it.
Sure.
And so, so Stick to Business is built as what can we learn from the masters of comedy, these people who have this incredibly difficult job that they make look easy. And so some people think it's a feature, some people think it's a bug, but there's a lot of stand up in the book.
Mm-hmm.
But I have one chapter that's a big healthy dose of improv.
Okay. My favorite.
My favorite.
Yeah.
Personally, it's my favorite form of comedy. Like if I'm going to go watch a show, I prefer improv.
I mean, same. And I 100% agree, but also 90% of improv shows I watch, I find intolerable.
That's funny.
It's like absolutely my favorite. And then half the time I watch, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life.
Well, I love it. And I only watch a handful of shows, and because I'm here, I'm watching among the best, including Sentimental Lady. So one of the things that I like about when you start looking at improv, you very quickly can move beyond this yes and principle, which is frankly tired.
I think it's the way we talk about it, at least when I was still teaching, is like yes and is a great foot in the door. It's hardly the whole conversation.
Hardly.
It's really the spirit of it is true, and it's very there, and it's such a great bumper sticker phrase, but it's a lot more. There's just a lot more to it than that,
And I think as you get better, you don't need as much yes and.
I think you need it, but I think you get to, as you were saying, you get to bend the rules a little bit, right? Like when you start out, it feels very cut and dried. It just means everything you say, I have to say yes and to. And the example we would give when teaching is like, if a character in an improv scene says to you, I'm gonna stab you in the eye with a pencil if you don't get out of my way, you'd say, yes, you're gonna stab me in the eye with a pencil, and I'm going to get out of your way.
Right.
It doesn't mean like, okay, I guess I get stabbed now. You still have to filter all that stuff through. How do people actually behave? How would someone actually react? It's not as simple as just like, well, we'll take the, express train to Zanytown or something like that.
Indeed. Now, I also like to point out is that there's also something in improv called editing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? So there's times where someone goes, okay, we're done.
Yes.
There's no more yesing.
Yes.
Right? Like this.
Yeah.
And that's someone usually coming off the back line and like sort of jogging through a scene.
Yeah.
Is the way edits usually happen.
Yeah. There's different forms of them, but that's sort of the main one. Yeah.
What's the other ones?
Well, there's so that's a wipe edit where someone physically runs across the stage.
And it's usually after a big laugh line.
Yeah. But that's the thing is a wipe edit kind of needs a big laugh line because you need something to fill the void of someone physically running across the stage.
While people are laughing.
Yeah, and then the reset of two new people coming out to start a scene.
Okay.
So, the other sort of edits are, the main two would be a tag, which is instead of ending the scene.
Oh, you tap someone on the shoulder.
Yeah, you tag out one or more of the characters. That's a form of editing.
So just for the person who doesn't know this very well,
sure.
Let's say two people are having a scene, they're at dinner
Persons
or whatever.
A and B,
and then someone says something.
Yeah.
And then someone comes off the line, they tap one of the people, and then it's like, it might be a jump ahead or a jump back.
Yeah, so go off of that, if two people are at dinner and they're on a date, and one of them's like, oh my God, my dad's from Ohio. What'd he do? He was the president of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. They have a president? They have a rigorous electoral system,
yeah.
And then we tag to go see, the dad
in
campaigning.
An interview for it.
Yeah, exactly, So that's a tag edit. And then there's organic edits, which are more subtle than a wipe edit. They're great tools for when the audience isn't so, worked up and overflowing with response that, you're going to have a little bit of silence where you walk through and break what we call the plane of the scene, literally just the line of eye contact the the characters are making. You literally walk through that and just start talking, and the next scene starts kind of before the audience has a chance to really figure out what's going on. And then, of course, in different forms, there's internal edits, which are more or less invisible to an audience, but improvisers can pick up on, where, you know, even at that dinner table scene, you can have a conversational edit, you know, where you go like, okay, well, this, you know, we're not getting any traction with this thing. I'm just going to really make like a quick left turn in conversation. And that's fundamentally an edit. You're keeping the new characters, but you're starting a completely new scene with those characters. You know, so some of those things, the wipe edit is obviously the most visible to an audience, and the easiest to spot. But there are a lot of like other types that you use depending on the situation and depending on what your goals are with the edit. You know?
I have to say I'm a big fan of a tag edit.
Oh, I love it. That's Convoy. That's all we do is tags. We stopped doing wipes in 2006. You know?
So old.
Yeah.
I just love that because, you know, what happens is I wouldn't call myself a veteran audience member, but I mean,
I think you are at this point, honestly.
That's fair.
You've been coming to improv shows regularly for nearly a decade. Like, give yourself that due.
That's fine. So when what I haven't done is I haven't had all the accompanying training. So I've only had 101 and 201. So I don't have like the Harold memorized. I'm not following all the rules, but you know, but whenever there's a tag edit, I get excited because I know someone's got an idea that has a chance to be fun.
Yeah.
You know,
I think also like with a wipe edit, I mean, and if this is, please feel free to cut me off if I'm geeking out too hard on improv here. But, you know, with a wipe edit, you're completely resetting.
Yeah. It's like rebooting your computer.
Yeah. You know, it's that scene is done now. And what you're doing is you're giving the audience a chance to release a lot of tension that's built up over the course of the scene. Like a well-executed wipe edit. Like, I don't know if you've seen the Twitter feed, perfectly edited screams. But it's like it always comes half a beat before the audience is expecting it. The edit itself is kind of a surprise in the way we want a joke to be a little bit of a surprise. And then that gives them this kind of like big chance for release. And then they're coming into the next scene like having gotten rid of that tension. With a tag edit, you're not giving them that chance. No. And if you're doing it properly, it builds it. Yeah, and it keeps that momentum going, you know, and it means that, you know, you might not get that big satisfying wipe edit laugh, but you also won't get the wipe edit pity clap, which we've all seen 1,000 times, which is like, you know, somebody runs across the stage because the scene has to end at some point. Maybe you missed the best point to end it. Maybe it's just a scene that, because luck of the draw, doesn't have a point like that. And the audience gives you like, you know, that kind of like, yes, I acknowledge this is over, and that's a bad feeling, you know. So
I want to ask. So you fortunately or unfortunately weren't part of this, but I went to some Sentimental Ladies shows recently.
Yes, while I was out of town.
I always text you how it went. Afterwards.
Yeah.
And I was like, they didn't need you tonight. They killed it.
Yeah, they missed you.
So I actually went a couple weeks ago, and it was spectacular.
Yeah.
You know, it was
probably because of my absence.
No, I doubt that. But it was 4 people, and they just
they all said that show was super fun. This was like last weekend, right? Yes. They all had such a good time during that show. Yeah.
It was incredibly fun, and I brought like 5 people to it. And so I was just like, this is great. A couple weeks earlier, not so good. And so I was wondering like how much, like, while it's all happening, what's your internal dialogue, and then afterwards, what's the dialogue when both of those things are happening? When you're just not, I mean, you're this group's mean, their average is very high. Yeah, they're all very, I mean, for people not listening, Sentimental Ladies been together since May of 2006. So we're going on 14 years now. Yeah, these are veterans. Yeah. But, you know, there are deviations. Yeah. Sometimes it's just, there's off nights. I had one very recently with Sentimental Lady. That was such a bummer. And so while it's happening, what's going on in your head? Because, you know, what I have often think of is like, it's hard to think about all this other stuff because being in the improv scene already is so difficult. So is anything happening at the time, or is it all afterwards you go, oh well? Well, during the good shows, I think there is no, at least for me, there is no internal
monologue. You know, like the good shows are, for me, are the ones where you're playing so reflexively and the audience is reacting to your reactions, and you kind of get into this flow state, you know, very genuinely, where you're just doing it, you know.
And then you get off. Are you like high-fiving backstage?
We're not high-fiving, but like, you know, there is a thing like my groups are all like pretty subdued people off stage, you know, so you walk off stage and like we had a really fun show on Thursday night, you know, and it's late and we're all old, and we walk backstage. We're like, yeah, that was fun. Yeah, it was fun. I like this part. Oh, yeah, that was good. What was that thing you mentioned? Oh, it was this. Ah, cool. You know, like that's kind of the tone of it.
So the audience is talking a lot more about it than you guys.
Yeah, okay. Definitely. That's good. You know, but it used to be the case when we were younger and still kind of figuring it out that we would take meticulous notes afterwards. One of my groups would tape their shows every week. We would watch it down a couple days later and then spend like half an hour, 40 minutes picking apart a 25-minute show, you know, just talking about like, well, here's what I liked about this. Here's what I was trying to do here. Here's why it didn't quite work, you know. And when you have a coach, which Sentimental Lady did for its first 5 or 6 years, a coach does that with the team, you know, but all my teams have kind of evolved past the point of coaches at this point. So, you know, but with, so the good shows, you kind of like complement each other, you know. My sort of advice for students who don't have coaches on their teams, like if you have a compliment, it's for somebody else. If you have a criticism, it's for you. It never goes the other way. You don't pat yourself on the back and you don't give someone else a hard time because you're all equals, you know, like,
yes, right.
So, you know, but during a bad show...
And by the way, because improv is so collaborative, if you did something good, it's very likely because someone set you up.
Yes, you're responding to someone else. Like nothing happens in a vacuum, you know, but that's why I think it's like I think it's gracious personally, if there was a problem with the show, to try to find like, well, what was your contribution to it? Because... you know, yeah, you were reacting to someone else, but you fundamentally thought that reaction was a good idea in the moment. So how can you call yourself out in a way to give everybody else on your team the full benefit of the doubt? And then normally they'll go like, no, I had misread this thing, you know, and it tends to spark a productive conversation. But yeah, bad shows, you know it very quickly. And a good show can become a bad show in one line. You know, there's a example I give where Sentimental Lady had been at a comedy festival in New York called DCM, Del Close Marathon. Years ago, we were doing what's called...
This is like a 24-hour marathon of
more
improv,
than that,
right?
like 72. Yeah. So, but we had a good slot, good theater, good house. We're doing a good show. We're doing a monoscene, which is very difficult. It's you just get one suggestion and you have just one scene, all those same characters, that same scenario for like 30 minutes.
Okay.
It's going well. I had made a choice early on in the scene to be kind of like an asshole, you know, like he's smoking his cigar, you know, he's just kind of like cutting everybody off, you know, that sort of thing. And like cutting people off as a character, but, you know, very much so like allowing myself to be the butt of jokes as a team member, you know. And again, this was a team. We're all very close. We have different boundaries with one another than you might expect, right? So there is, because our team was put together in 2006, it has one woman because the theater was not nearly as gender diverse then as it is now.
A lot of the younger teams are super diverse.
It's great. Yeah. I think it's I think we need more of it. But yeah,
I went to the Benetton show.
Oh yeah, Benetton's great.
It's great.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
Yeah,
and
it's a lot looser because they're just less experienced folks.
Yeah, but it's this sort of thing where like these people have always been around. It's just, you know, until you get people with that perspective in a higher position, you might not have somebody who can appreciate their point of view and respond to their comedy. And, you know, so I think it's moving in a positive direction, but it hadn't yet when the show in question happened. And so we're having a good show and my character...
I'm already cringing.
Oh, it's about to get so bad. I regret it so much. This happened over a decade ago and we still talk about it as a memorably bad moment when an entire audience like just turned on me. So there was a moment where we had said something and everybody had responded and my character was kind of like an alpha and my friend Susie, who's on the team, Susie Barrett, was going to say something, and I personally think Susie's a brilliant improviser.
She is.
And in those situations...
She's one of my favorites.
She's so good. She's so stupidly good. It makes me upset. I still learn things just from playing with her, you know, like, which is a very high compliment. But so everybody's talking at once, and I sort of shout over everybody else, my intention as a performer being, hey, I think Susie's going to have something funny to say, and she's not going to cut through on her own because she's too polite of a player. I'll tee Susie up. But my character is an asshole. So he says, let's hear what the slit has to say, which Susie knows I don't mean. But for that entire room full of people who have seen this team from LA come out
and a bunch of dudes.
Yeah, a bunch of dudes, and it's like, and it was a record scratch, and nothing I said got any response for the last 10 minutes of the show. It was so brutal. And the entire time I was just like, okay, yeah, you crossed a hell of a fucking line, and they all called you on it, and they're right to call you on it. So now you know not to cross it again.
I'm sure you've played this over in your mind. Is there any coming back from that?
Yeah, there is, but you have to it takes a little bit of luck, for that character to come back at that point. For you as a performer to come back at that point, what you have to do is convince the audience beyond a shadow of a doubt that you are fully aware of how in the wrong that character is.
Yes.
But the problem is, in that particular kind of scene, you are that character. And so you can't convince them. You
can't come out as someone else and criticize that character or do something else.
You can. A more recent example, this is from 3 weeks ago, is I was doing another mono scene with my group Convoy. So there's 3 of us. And somehow we were on a boat. We were kind of vaguely old-timey sea captains in a modern-day setting. Mm-hmm. Someone had asked whether or not we rollerbladed or roller skated. And someone said they rollerbladed, and someone asked me if I rollerbladed, and my response was to use a bit of slang that I heard when I was in middle school and haven't examined or thought about since. The term is fruit booter for rollerblader, which is obviously derogatory.
Yes, I see.
So obviously, but if you haven't thought about it since you were 12, you just go this is a fun rhyming term. It's just fun because it rhymes. You don't think about oh yeah, that was a time when homosexuality was not nearly as accepted. And I said it on stage and got called out on it immediately by the rest of my team. And then literally, that was 10 minutes into the show. And literally the next 20 minutes of the show were my character just going as me, but through my character, the thing is I had heard that term a long time ago and not really examined it. But yeah, obviously it's problematic, and I wouldn't say it anymore. But, if you don't examine something for 25 years and then you say it, you should be allowed that moment of grace and, apologize, so it's
And did that
Yeah, I mean, but part of why it worked is because the other 2 guys on my team were so merciless in being it was set up as the 3 of us were on the ship, and if you had a problem with the other one, you had to report to HR for the third,
yes.
And so it was set up going okay, and so then in our report, we have here that the next thing you said was toot toot my boots in the fruit. And you'd be yeah, that was part of the rhyme. That's why I thought it was just a fun rhyming thing, but you really, it's very difficult once an audience turns on you. And I know this from being an audience member, to convince them that it was a character choice and not a personal choice.
Yes.
And that's a fair thing. An audience should feel that way. Absolutely. Because why give a fucking white dude in cargo shorts the benefit of the doubt when he uses the word slit, that he's not just saying it? You know what I mean?
And then he doesn't say it all the time,
yes.
and then it just rolls off the tongue.
And then if that's the case, why encourage that behavior? Mm-hmm. Even if it is just a character choice, I, as an audience member, wouldn't encourage that because I don't want to see it for the rest of the show. You know what I mean? So during a bad show, it, and your internal monologue the whole time is just, oh no. And then because you're having that internal monologue, it's very difficult to bring it back to a good show because now you're internal monologuing instead of just reflexing,
Yes.
I play video games. You never get a high score when you're thinking, I'm going to get the high score. You do it when you're just playing.
Yes.
It's a similar thing.
So your cargo shorts have come up a couple times now.
Yeah, sure.
So you have a sort of signature outfit.
Yeah.
A T-shirt? Is it always the same T-shirt? No.
It's my T-shirts these days have settled into either a dark blue or a dark green Hanes.
Thank you for going
BFT.
Unbranded.
Yes.
And then a pair of cargo shorts.
Yeah, always a pair of camo cargo shorts.
They're kind of long.
Yeah, they're kind of longish. I buy them as pants, then I cut them into shorts myself.
Oh, is that right? Of course.
Yeah.
And then some sort of sneakers or something.
Yeah, normally a pair of, I would call them brown dad shoes. I believe right now they're, it's a pair of brown New Balance. They're as nondescript as can be.
Yes.
Yeah.
So why?
I mean,
by the way, no one really dresses up for improv.
No.
It's usually people in some sort of like polo shirt, t-shirt, pair of khakis, jeans.
I think it varies theater by theater, like, but certainly at UCB, the vibe has always been like, be you on stage, like the audience wants you, whereas when I was at IO West, there was a little bit more of like, and I think this came from the Chicago theater scene. There was a little bit more of like, no, this is theater. It's a performance. Put on slacks and a button down, like they came to see you. Don't look like a schlub. Whereas UCB is kind of like, no, you're a schlub. Don't, you can't unschlub. But for me, king of the schlubs, it's just an OCD thing. Like, it's not even like a performance choice. It's just, I have OCD. And when I was 21, I put on a pair of cargo camo shorts and it clicked in a way that I cannot explain to anybody other than saying it's love at first sight.
Okay.
And then, and so that was, when I was 21, so 16 years ago at this point, I just wear them every day. They feel like second skin.
Got it.
When I'm not wearing them, I feel very uncomfortable.
How many do you have?
I have one pair. It gets washed more regularly than you would think, but not as regularly as you would hope. So, I have one pair. It lasts about a year, and then I go get another one. It's kind of ritualistic.
Well,
at
way
this
to
point.
keep your burn rate down.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I couldn't tell you what the other members, if they wear the same thing all the time, is part of it because I know you. And got to know you early that I noticed the cargo short. Do people comment on your cargo short?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. But yeah, and then with the shirts, it's also like, I feel like if I'm wearing anything other than like a solid color, I feel like my shirt is screaming at me. Like if you were wearing a shirt with a graphic on the front or anything else,
it would be bizarre.
It wouldn't bother me at all.
It wouldn't bother you.
But if I was wearing that same shirt that didn't bother me on you, I would spend the whole day feeling like my chest was screaming at me.
So, I may be able to help you a little bit with this. So there's this research on what's called the spotlight effect.
What's that?
So it goes something like this. Imagine you had a stain on your shirt.
Sure.
Horrifying. Right?
Yes.
Everybody notices, everybody sees it, all this stuff. And these researchers thought, you're probably overly concerned about this. We sort of feel like we have a spotlight on us. Whatever. The people notice these things and makes us self-conscious and so on.
Yeah, you make an error in conversation. You think about it incessantly. Nobody else even notices.
They don't even remember it.
Yeah.
So in order to test this idea, they ran this experiment and they actually used a T-shirt. And it was a, oh my God, what is his name? It's one of these like quirky singers, like old guys. You write the songs. What's like a
Hawaiian shirt or something like that?
No, it's like a not with Rod Stewart on it. Even worse than like I can't believe I can't think of his
Barry
name.
Manilow?
Barry Manilow.
All right, yeah.
Barry Manilow. So a Barry Manilow shirt. So what happened is you get a group of 6 people or 5 people or whatever it is. They're sitting around a table and they're having some conversation about something. Before the experiment, they essentially randomly assign one of the people who was sitting around the table to wear a Barry Manilow T-shirt. As you might imagine, if you're an undergraduate, this is a horrifying thing.
Yes, this is nightmarish.
It's a nightmarish.
Yeah.
And but they don't tell anybody that this has happened. And then they have this conversation, and then at the end of the conversation, everybody fills out surveys. And one of the questions in the survey is, did anybody have any unusual shirt on? Did you see a Barry Manilow shirt? Did you see these other kind of things? And so you can measure whether people noticed this person's Barry Manilow shirt. And so if you ask the person how many people noticed the Barry Manilow shirt, what they basically say is everybody noticed.
Yeah, of course they noticed.
All they were doing was staring at the Barry Manilow shirt and so on. And what you end up finding out is that when you ask people, like, was someone wearing a Barry Manilow shirt, yes or no, and all this stuff, it's like one person might have noticed it.
Yeah, and even then, like, they're going like, yeah, I guess that one dude had a shirt. Yeah,
you know what I mean? And because what's happening is all everybody's thinking about is themselves.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Everyone's just like really dealing with all this in here.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, so it makes us a little bit too self-conscious.
Yeah.
Because we care about ourselves, but everybody sort of cares about themselves, and so we don't have to be as self-conscious.
Yeah.
That paradoxical element to it.
And next time you see me, I'm going to be wearing a 3-piece suit, top hat. I'm going to be the mayor of Hollywood. It's going to be my new role.
I wouldn't make that sartorial choice. But one thing I do like about it, as someone who runs hot, I like that it's cool and comfortable.
Yes. Oh my God. I'm always sweaty. I was on the East Coast last week, and I was in Lawrence, Massachusetts, visiting my daughter. And when I left LA, it was like probably like 55, 60 degrees here. The day I got to Massachusetts, it was 9 degrees. I was wearing the exact same thing. All I changed was I put on a beanie for a hat.
Yes.
You know, there were more people in shorts on the East Coast in that weather than there were. Like LA was better bundled up than Massachusetts. It was wild.
Makes people soft.
It was. Oh my God, it was so funny.
So I want to wrap up with a couple of questions or comments and get your reactions to this.
Sure.
So in this chapter where I lean very heavily on improv, I talk about how important it is for people to collaborate in order to make something.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you can have a genius idea as an individual, but if you want to execute it, you need other people.
Yeah, yeah.
And in that way, the sort of rules of improv are very useful. They help you get along. They help you make things. So I had Will Hines on the podcast.
Oh, big fan of Will, but I can't say it publicly, so screw that guy.
So Will's on,
and he's a brilliant. I mean, by the way, he understands improv 10,000. He knows. He's forgotten more about it than I will ever know.
He's something else.
I think he's truly brilliant.
And he's on The Smokes.
Yes, yeah.
Which is a Monday night show.
And he, for years, was the head of UCB's training facility. He was the head of curriculum.
Oh, I didn't know
sort of
that.
Stuff. Yeah.
But he, so I was talking to him about how much I like this "we're all a supporting actor" part of improv. We've alluded to it earlier, right? Like if you're going to criticize someone else, well, then you need to criticize yourself because no one acts alone, at least fully alone. And then I was talking about my love of gifting, and he's like, gifting's not that important. I was like, well, what is? And he says listening.
Mm-hmm.
And once you start thinking about it, if you've ever done any sort of look, if you've lived life,
yeah,
you know how hard it is to listen.
It's because it's that spotlight effect, I guess. Where you're just going like, I have something brilliant to add.
I can't wait to talk.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does take a while to not just be waiting for your turn to speak.
Because what's happening in an improv scene, in particular, is stuff is unfolding.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're paying attention to what you're going to say, you just missed.
Yeah, you're missing all the details,
which is what you should be responding to.
Yeah. I think Will would say you won't need a gift. Someone won't need to give you a gift if you're just paying attention to them.
Oh, that's well said.
The implicature of what they're saying should be self-evident if you're paying close attention.
So, do you have any? I mean, you're obviously an improviser. You've done teaching. Do you have any? If someone wants to become a better listener.
Mm-hmm.
How do they do it?
Yeah, man.
Besides setting an intention to listen.
Yeah, I mean, you have to actively do it. I think that's the thing is like people think listening is a passive thing, like you sit and listen, but you have to really actively do it. And I think there's an exercise I would do in improv class, which is one of the more insufferable like actor warm-up exercises that anyone will ever do. But it's truly helpful for listening. And it's where you get the whole group of people in the classroom, so 16 people or however many are there that day, to stand together with their heads down and count to 20 as a group.
I've done this.
So in this exercise, what normally happens is, they'll go around. Normally everybody, the group tops out at like 8 or 9 and they get very frustrated. And so what they'll start doing is they'll start spring loading stuff. You'll get people who are like, I'm the 11 guy. As soon as someone says 10, I'm going to say 11 right away, And when you call that out, that exercise is obviously a very specific microcosm.
Yeah, just to make sure it's clear, people understand what it is. So the goal is, I say 1, someone else says 2, 3. If 2 people say 4 at the same time, you go back to 1.
Yeah, you got to start all over again.
Yes, and sometimes it clicks and you're like boom, 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 and you get right to 20 and everybody's like celebrating. And then sometimes it gets painful.
Yes.
And you think, oh my God, we might be here.
Yes.
All day.
Oh, and I was the instructor who would hang them out until they did it. I would absolutely be like, nope. And if they got it too quickly, I'd be like, spell brontosaurus,
I don't even know how to spell brontosaurus.
You would learn in this exercise. But so the idea with the exercise though is like you're counting to 20 as a group, right? And so you get these people who are so fixated on the goal of getting to 20 that they try to kind of game the system a little bit. They go like, well, I'm not going to say anything except 11. And then as soon as I say 11, I'm done, And what you need to do in those situations is point out like, hey, when you're doing that, you're spring loading a response. You're not actually listening. And when you point that out, what you find is the exercise, it relaxes. You lose this. Once you tell them the goal is not to get to 20, the goal is just to say the next number without stepping on anybody's toes. All of a sudden, people can count to like 50 or 60 without even thinking about it.
Really?
Yeah. So like, in terms of bringing that back out of, I presume not everybody has a group of 16 people who are willing to sit around and listen to an instructor, misquote Alan Watts at them. But I do think there's this feeling in a conversation a lot of the time where you're trying to get to a goal, and the most efficient use of your time is going to be to get to that goal as fast as possible. But that's false. It's completely false. You can't be where you're not. You're here and you're now. That's the only thing you can say with any certainty. And so the more that you can really just kind of focus on the moment, and even if you do have a brilliant idea, ignore it, and this is something you have to do on stage where it's like, yeah, that idea is really great, but if it's not the right moment for it, it doesn't matter. There has to be a goodness of fit between the idea and the moment in which it happens. And the good improvisers are the ones who will shut their trap until the right idea pops up at the right moment. And so with, just in general listening, something I try is to go like, if my thought was that brilliant and it's that relevant, the conversation will circle back around to it and it'll be valid, a minute from now or 5 minutes from now or whatever. If it wasn't,
it'll be irrelevant.
Yeah. So then why hang on to it?
I see.
Which I think was something for me as an improviser that was difficult to learn, but has been very, very useful overall. Particularly like if you're ever in like a heated disagreement or something like that, like the ability to just go like, this idiot is wrong, but if I'm correct, they'll be wrong in the same way in 5 minutes.
Right, yeah, I get it.
I can stick it to them then,
I mean, look, I'm working on it.
Yeah. Everyone is.
This podcast, I'm not going to say I'm shuttering it, but I'm sort of winding it down, and I'm starting to focus on some other things. Obviously, all the episodes are going to stay up, and then if I have some opportunity, I'm going to continue to do it. But, my goal was always to do 100. Actually, it might have been to do 50 and then to do another 50.
Yeah, you get a stretch goal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Part of the reason I chose to do the podcast was to learn a new skill, which was I'm very good at being interviewed.
Yeah.
Lots of experience. How could I become a better facilitator, listener, and so on? And, I've gotten better, but I still have a long way to go, as we do with anything. The one thing I do well, if I may,
you may,
is I'm good at remembering and bringing things back.
Yeah. Finding that like point.
Yeah, we haven't covered that. And so, because as a listener, it's really annoying if you leave something hanging. Because they're like, well, I want to know about that thing.
I dated a woman once who phrased it very well. She said, I don't like open parentheses.
Yes.
I was like, oh man, I'm stealing that.
That's great.
Yeah.
I'm glad you got something from that relationship.
Yeah, it's truly, that was it.
So the other thing, speaking of Will Hines and Billy Merritt was another
genius.
I've had a lot of UCB people.
Yeah.
It's why the fact that you're on here so late is a little mildly embarrassing. These guys, so Billy had this taxonomy, and then him and Will wrote this book, Pirate, Robot, Ninja.
Yeah.
And so I encourage people to listen to those episodes because we talk deeply about Pirate, Robot, Ninja. It also shows up as Shtick to Business. Because one of the things I like about this is, so you can correct me if I get this wrong, but essentially the idea is there's sort of these two general styles of improvisers. You're either one or the other at the beginning of your career, so to speak. You're either this sort of swashbuckling, swinging in tornado of a person like who kind of walks out first and is big.
Yeah.
And
giant characters, big physicality, big voice.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the pirate, obviously. Or you're a robot, which is much more sort of analytical. And does like a little bit of more of the kind of backup work and so on.
Yeah, the connective tissue.
Yes.
Yeah. A very important role.
Yeah, I think like as I think as Billy says, you can't have a team of of pirates. You can't have a team of robots.
Yeah.
You need both.
Mm-hmm.
And the robots are a little more cerebral, and they're sort of, they're like guiding and so on and so forth. And then of course the ultimate, the goal, whether you're a pirate or a robot, is to become a ninja.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Which is, I can be a pirate when I need to be. I can be a robot when I need to be. I will serve the scene. I'll serve the team as needed.
A team of ninjas is the ultimate goal for every team.
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
100%.
And so I'm curious. So first of all, what your reaction to that idea, and then also like, what were you? What are you?
Yeah. I think the idea in general, I think, is super useful, although, and I think Billy would agree with me on this. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think it's one of those ideas that because it breaks things down so cleanly into those three categories, it runs the risk of oversimplifying things for students.
That's fair, yeah.
And I'm a big fan of Adam Curtis's documentaries, and his whole thing is like, the world is super complex, so we make simple models of it, but then we forget that the model is not the world. The map is not the territory, sort of a thing.
Yes.
I think it's a great map. I think Pyro Robot Ninja is a fantastic map. But I do think there are like gradients in between there, and I think Billy would absolutely
that's
agree.
Fair. Yeah, it's
I
not
think
categories. It's
No. I think, I don't think that's, but I do think it's in the same way that like yes and is kind of like a blunt force rule. It's not a scalpel for every moment. It is a great way to kind of sort things into buckets to start making more sense of it. Like you can't, the reason we make simple models is because you can't jump straight into the more complex models. You got to kind of have those like toeholds, and then once you have that framework, it really lets you build more complex things off of it. And I think it's a fantastic framework.
Okay. With that said, what are you?
I think that I was a pirate in my younger days with robot tendencies. I think that now...
You think it's rare?
I think it's rare. I can think of one true ninja, maybe two.
Wow, okay. So this is...
In my opinion, yeah.
Okay.
One of the ninjas is on the smokes. His name is Brian Gallivan. And I've never seen somebody so comfortable with sitting on the back line almost to the risk of not getting to perform in the show at all, but then will come forward with one line that will button a scene so perfectly that it's the move you talk about the rest of the night.
Wow, okay. That's very robot-like.
That's ninja-like, I would think.
I know. Oh, I see. I was thinking of that. That's a robot role.
I think it's like the core bias you have to overcome when you're doing improv is the scene probably doesn't need you.
Yes, I see.
It's a lot of fun. You're looking for a way to get in on it because it looks like fun with your friends.
Give me the ball.
Yeah. But like, it fundamentally, half the time it fundamentally doesn't need you.
Okay.
That's not to say that's not any mark on the royal you, but 9 times out of 10, the reason you want to step off the back line is not for the scene's sake. It's for your sake.
That's fair.
And I think ninjas are really good at playing selflessly and going, hey, if the scene doesn't need me, I'm just going to hang out on the back line. And that way I'm ready to jump in if something unexpected comes up. Because when you come off the back line, you're making a trade-off. You're establishing yourself as a part of the world, and unestablishing that to reestablish something new if the scene needs it is much, much more difficult and much harder to pull off and much more difficult for an audience to stomach. Whereas if you're not part of that world and then all of a sudden something's called for and you're ready and able and ready to be there, that's great. But you run the risk of not getting to be part of that fun scene or part of that fun show. So I don't think I'm a ninja yet. I think I still have too much fun with the swashbuckling moments. I think I still, like when a scene is going well, it's too reflexive for me to after so many years of teaching to go like, it needs these 3 things and I can provide them in this way,
That's interesting. I'm going to mildly disagree with you.
Disagree, please.
Because I've watched you do a lot of improv, and I feel like you do pick your spots a lot, especially with that strong team. And so I think you have a more ninja quality than you might.
Oh, well, I'll take that as a high compliment.
I do.
But yeah,
I mean it in that way. Well, of course, if you're going to apply this model to life, I think it's useful, right? Like, sometimes someone else is the star of the show.
Yeah.
Sometimes someone else is the star of this meeting. It's their thing. Sometimes you're the one who just has to go, hey, can you tell me more about that?
Yes, yeah. You just got to tee them up,
right? You know what I mean? And I think there's like a lot of and business doesn't always reward that.
Mm-hmm.
Business rewards the person who's taking all the credit.
Yeah.
And but if you actually want to solve problems, sometimes it's important to.
Well, I think improv has the same sort of ninja blindness. Like it's for years I sat on the committee at UCB that would run auditions for the house teams and pick improvisers. And a discussion we would have to actively have is like, yeah, this person made a big flashy move and this person didn't. But this person might be doing the better improv specifically because they
did not do something.
And it's the thing that we would have to tell students is like, your temptation when you go in an audition is going to make sure that you're memorable. You need to trust that the people watching you know improv good enough to catch the moments that aren't flashy.
Yes.
Because certainly in the early days, you'd have these teams of all pirates, because it would be 4 people running auditions and, you'd look at 200 people and catch the couple of pirates and put them all on a team and those teams would fail.
Yes.
And you would have to go like, no, you need people who are capable of like building the foundation so that somebody can jump off the edge.
I love that idea. Will and I talked about, improv being a lot like basketball, not baseball, where you can have all pirates in baseball because it's just the sum of everybody's performance.
Yeah.
But, it's why kind of like all-star games aren't always that great.
Yeah.
Or like rookie games aren't always that great because everybody's trying to shoot the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but in the world of basketball, you need some people to rebound and move the ball and pass and defend and do all these kinds of things. And so I like that idea that you have to be aware that the best improviser might not be doing something.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's really good. So, okay, last question.
Shoot.
Alex.
Yes.
What are you reading, watching, or listening to? That's outstanding, really good, great. Not run-of-the-mill good, but people should know about.
So I'll tell you why I laughed, because what I'm currently reading that is that I very much am enjoying, but I can't recommend it to anybody else because it's robot. It's a robot book. I'm currently reading the World Atlas of Jellyfish.
Okay.
A 1,000-page manifesto compiling all the Scyphozoa of the world with photos and different breakdowns. And I'm genuinely loving it. I saw this book
this
on
is a first.
Yeah. I saw this book on a science website as being like not a hey, this book came out, but being like, well, these researchers worked on this book about jellyfish. And I was like, book about jellyfish, I'll look it up. And it's like this hardcover, like, weighs like 1,000 pounds. But it's so fascinating. It's so fascinating. But I wouldn't recommend that for general reading.
But that's good. But I want to know what you think is really good. And that meets the criteria.
Yes, the World Atlas of Jellyfish. Yeah. Let's see. What am I watching? I'm actually...
It's a Barry.
Oh, Barry is fantastic.
Okay.
Oh, and you know what I recently watched? I was late to the party on this, but it's one of the best seasons of comedy I've ever seen, is American Vandal on Netflix.
Oh, not familiar.
It's brilliant. It's basically a true crime documentary set at a high school where the crime is somebody spray painted a dick on a car.
Oh, that's fun.
And they take it so seriously that you get legit invested in the mystery of who did it and like all the red herrings and false leads, and they hew to all the tropes of that genre.
Is this a series?
I think there's 2 seasons of it. Yeah, I've only seen the first season.
And so the first season is the dick on a car, and the second season is a different.
The second season, I don't know if there's a third season, but the second season, somebody, I think, puts laxatives in the cafeteria food and everybody gets diarrhea. and it's at a different high school, and they were so impressed with the documentary about the spray painted dick that they hired the same students to come solve the crime.
That's funny.
But it hews really, really well to the tropes, but also the acting is phenomenal. It just feels like you're watching high school kids. It feels very true to that.
That's great. Well, can I ask a question? Because I'm not really into these true crime.
Me neither. Yeah.
So you don't need to be.
No. Yeah. I mean, I think you just need to have seen one at some point in your life, but it's really not. It's done as the best sort of reference where it's like, if you get the reference of like what they're referring to trope wise, it adds to it. But if you don't get it, it just goes over your head and it doesn't.
Super.
Yeah. It's
I see
perfect.
what you mean.
Yeah, it's great. It's really
like,
great.
It's like it's like the children's cartoons.
Yes.
that have the adult jokes in them.
Yeah, I remember watching like Bugs Bunny when I was a kid going, what is Meatless Tuesday? And then like getting older, be like, oh, he's making a joke about rationing red meat during World War II. My God.
Right.
You know, like,
Yes. That's funny.
yeah.
Alex, thank you for your...
Thank you for having me.
By the way, I can't even say persistence because it's not like you were asking me to be on here. Thank you for your patience.
Of course.
in getting set up. This was great fun.
Thanks for having me.
Cool. Cheers.
All right.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to visit petermcgraw.org for more information about our guest, show notes, and social media links. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share with others. Join Dr. Peter McGraw next week for another fun, fascinating conversation on I'm Not Joking.
Yo.